Monday, and welcome to Power Talk. I'm your host, Jean Adrienne, and it is my pleasure to bring you information from many sources to help you on your pathway to ascension. And today, my guest is Tricia McCannon. She is a well-known author of many books. She is a spiritual teacher, and she's got so much information that she is going to be bringing forward for us today. So I'm very excited to introduce to you Tricia McCannon. So Tricia, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and find out more about you.
Well, good morning, Jean. It's such a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for having me. My website is my name, TriciaMcCannon.com or TriciaMcCannonSpeaks.com, and it's the TRICIA spelling, and McCannon is just like it sounds, Mac, MC, and then Cannon, CANNON.com. So that's pretty easy, and you'll find, my books, of course, are in bookstores, and they're on Amazon, but you can order them through my website. And, of course, I have about 30 DVDs. I have the whole mystery school I've been teaching for 14 years, so those 12 classes are online. So, and then there's all sorts of events where I go to conferences and speak. And as you know, I've just started doing this amazing series of classes with this wonderful online company called Sacred Stories Media. And Sacred Stories Media has some really wonderful teachers. But last year they approached me and I created a wonderful class for them on Mary Magdalene and the Divine Feminine and the Quest for the Holy Grail and the Merovingian bloodline. And that has just gone live, I think, today on Amazon. And so Amazon's going to be offering it, but you can go directly to the Sacred Stories Media site. And there's also a class they're going to be putting up probably in the next week on the lost years of Jesus. And then in July, we're going to be launching a new class on the Egyptian mysteries. So I imagine sometime in, the summer or the late summer, that will go up live on Amazon as well. So, that's a lot of information all at once. But, anyway, we are obviously very passionate about trying to get a lot of this higher consciousness awareness information out into the world, just like you are. So it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, thank you. And, all the stuff about the Divine Feminine and the Egyptian mystery schools and most especially Mary Magdalene really speaks to my heart and has for as long as I can even remember. But how did you get interested in it?
Well, I think that like a lot of people, I was raised Judeo-Christian. My dad was Baptist. My mom was Methodist. We became Episcopalian when I was like 10, and I was confirmed in the Episcopalian church, which actually I really loved. I considered it Catholic light because you had all the cool stuff like the, beautiful cathedrals and the rituals and stuff, but, they didn't have the guilt, so that was good.
Right.
But like a lot of people, I had always loved Jesus and really resonated with his message, but I felt like that, like in some of the churches we went to, the Baptists, for example, that initially I was raised in, there was a lot of hellfire, brimstone, and damnation. And I didn't quite get how that worked with, the God that Jesus was talking about, which was love and forgiveness and unity. And it just didn't make sense to me. And so I always was interested as a mystic. I'm a clairvoyant. I grew up across from a great forest. I saw the elementals in the forest. And then when I was 8, an angel began to come and teach me about the great chain of being and how the light and sound of God are stepped down through the vibrational levels through the many dimensions to eventually form the physical world. Well, this made perfect sense to me. So I knew there was a bigger picture, but I didn't know how to find the grown-ups that would have those answers because, when I was asking the ministers at the churches, although they seemed to be very earnest, good people, they didn't seem to know those things.
Right.
So I always, when I was 19, I was in school at FSU, and I had been...
Oh, my God. I didn't know you went to Florida State.
Did you go to FSU?
Yeah, I'm living in Tallahassee now, like right near the campus.
Well, FSU is a great school. I loved it, and it was really fun. I grew up here in Atlanta, but, my dad said you can't go west of the Mississippi, because, of course, I wanted to go to California, or north of the Mason-Dixon line, which is, the war between the states. He was a Southern man. So I picked Florida, which I found to be a very cool state. As I said, they don't just talk about earth shoes, they actually wear them. They
or no shoes.
Or no shoes. Yes. I mean, it's the beach, for heaven's sakes. So anyway, I had this very profound experience happen when I was 19, where this group of masters called the Viragi masters, and Viragi comes from the Sanskrit word virag, meaning detachment, meaning they had detached from worldly ambitions. You know, they weren't about money, power, sex, all the normal things people get involved in. And they were very committed to really soul traveling into these higher dimensions and charting them, and then becoming enlightened masters or sages, and then coming back and being able to help others to learn to get free of the bonds of the karma and things that we create here. So I was like, yep, that's my kind of path. You don't have to believe it and find out when I die. I can actually experience it now. So I became initiated in that path and began to meditate when I was 19, which was really, difficult to sit still when you're 19. And eventually,
still is at 70.
I know, it's true. And I eventually began to see the light and sound, and then began to have masters come and take me up into these temples of golden wisdom, and I began to study. So, in my straight Clark Kent life, I graduated from college. I came back to Atlanta. I opened a photography studio. I became an art director and a photographer. But my inner life was all about learning to work on the inner planes, and to meet masters and sages and to become their student and to try to figure out these great spiritual mysteries. And so in time, how I came to the divine feminine, which is, of course, what your question was, I'm sure that was a bit of a lead into it, but it was the short version. When I was about 27, I had, I talk about this in my book, Return of the Divine Sophia, which is one of my 4 books. I had this very powerful inner plane experience where I dreamt that I'd gone back to school for my master's. Isn't that funny? My master's degree. And when I woke up, there was all this extraterrestrial writing on the walls, like hieroglyphics, but slightly different from the whole Egyptian, like other symbols. And I thought, I have to remember this. And I fell back asleep. But when I woke back up, all the writing was gone. But I remember one symbol, which was a circle with a dot at the center. And for some reason, I knew that this meant the beginning of all things and the end of all things. But I had no idea how I could possibly even know that information. Right. So I wound up going to the library to see if I could find what it meant. And the student assistant came and got me and said, there is a phone call for you at the front desk. And I'm like, how is that possible? Nobody even knows I'm here. And so I went to the front desk and picked up the phone, show and tell. This is so great about video. Hello, who is this? And they said, is this Tricia McCannon? And I said, yes. And this woman said, we've called to tell you that your dreams are real. And I'm like, who is this? And she said, we're from the priestesses of Isis, and that's all we're permitted to tell you at this time. And I'm like, who? What? And then she hung up. So then I'm like, who the heck are the priestesses of Isis? And what are they doing calling me? And how do they even know I was here? So then I woke up. It was a dream within a dream. And of course, there were all these clues, the hieroglyphics and the symbol and the priestesses. Well, about 2 months later, I was in the physical third dimensional world here. I'd gone to lunch at this place called Roussan's, a sushi restaurant, and there was a line, so I had to wait. So I decided to kill some time and go into this wonderful little store called Illumina with thick carpets and gorgeous crystals and beautiful statues. And I was in there looking at this Egyptian statue, and the woman behind the counter said, are you interested in Egyptian things? And I said, yeah, I've been dreaming of the priestesses of Isis. And she said, oh, tell me your dreams. And I said, well, you're not going to understand my dreams. I'm not even sure I understand them. And she said, try me. I'm a Hierophant, which means a high initiate in the priestesses of Isis. And this, of course, was to become my shaman teacher. And this happened over 30 years ago.
Is that Anya by any chance?
No. This is a wonderful, very hidden woman in Atlanta called Shasta Zaring. She's still alive. She's quite amazing. And she lives over this sacred vortex where women have been coming to do prayer work for over 10,000 years. And I love Shasta. And I went and spent the day with her about 2 weeks later, the afternoon. And the thing she said, Jean, it just turned my world upside down, because I've been raised in the patriarchal religions. I did not know, for example, that there for thousands of years God was thought of as the divine mother who created the universe, because everyone can notice in biology that the only one that ever gives birth to anything is the feminine. So how could God be a man? It's like God has to, be either beyond, gender or the divine feminine. Well, as long as that idea was held, men and women ruled together in a partnership model, and there was absolutely no war on this planet. I'm like, no war? Are you kidding me? I mean, we have been steeped in war for 4,000 years, to the point that we just expect that that's who we are, is this warlike, crazy, dualistic civilization. And so I was, of course, a scaredy cat. I from my very traditional family's point of view, I was already out on the leading edge. I was meditating, for heaven's sakes, and interested in...
You're going to go to hell for that.
Yes, exactly. And I was interested in masters from the Far East, and I believed in soul travel and multidimensional reality. So I was like, oh no, this will really put them over the edge. So, even though I knew my guides wanted Shasta to teach me, I was like, listen, I am not ready yet. So when I am ready, though, will you teach me? And so she made a vow to me. Yes, when you are ready, come and find me and I will teach you. And so 5 years passed. And I that story I began with in the first 3 pages of the Sophia book. And it's how I became, finally 5 years later, there were all these synchronicities that were happening. It became obvious that the only person who might even know the answers to why these divine feminine goddess energies were showing up in my clairvoyant readings around some of my clients was Shasta. And so I went to her and I said, I think I'm ready, even though I was still, like, oh my God. And so she convened a circle. And so in that book, you're taken into these hidden shamanic circles. And then, of course, because she would tell me things that were outside of what I had learned in Sunday school, when she would say something like, for example, she told me that all mammals are created biologically female first, that the existence of the male is because of the release of an additional androgen. In other words, the male is a subset of the female, not the way we've been taught in the Abrahamic religions, which is God created Adam and then took a rib, and that's how Eve got created, and therefore she should be subservient forever and ever, which is how that whole thing got justified. Mm-hmm. Well, it's actually the exact opposite. That's a total lie. The biology is that all mammals are created feminine. So the masculine existence, the companion to the goddess, and of course the goddess loves her beautiful men. We all love our beautiful men, but that they are the companions. They're the subset biologically. And of course I was to find out that this was actually anatomically and biologically true. I did my research. So as you know, in that book, we toggle back and forth between what you're learning in the circle and then me rolling up my sleeves and going into the research, which of course brought me to Mary the Mother. It brought me to Mary Magdalene. It brought me to the teachings of the Gnostics, who were the early Christians that had come directly out of the Essenes and out of Jesus' teachings, who believed that Mary Magdalene...
Out of Egypt before that.
Yes, exactly, out of Egypt before that. And they believed that periodically the divine father and mother, let us say there's the one beyond duality that splits itself into the divine masculine, which is very beautiful, and the divine feminine, the mother and father of creation. And those are the circles that are joined by the End of Pisces that we see in sacred geometry. And that's the first trinity, the one beyond, the one whose name is beyond being spoken, the divine father and mother. And then, of course, through that window of the End of Pisces, the divine father, the divine son, and the divine daughter are born, the children of creation. And periodically it was believed that those emanations come to Earth, or perhaps even to other planets, to uplift humanity. And so the Gnostics believed that Mary Magdalene was the female Christ, just as Jesus was the male Christ. And Jesus even says, he even says that. He says, the daughter and son come to earth, even as I and Mary Magdalene have come. And he says that he cannot return until the divine feminine is re-enthroned in the world, which, what's so crazy is a lot of people who would love for Jesus to kind of show back up, whether it's physically shows back up or whether it's the Christ consciousness that comes and sweeps the world and heals the world. I mean, we don't really know. These are all in the great mysteries. It's interesting that some of them come out of this very traditional, patriarchal paradox where they don't realize how very important it is for that feminine wave to come back into balance with the sacred masculine in order to heal this planet. Because as long as we stay in a negative masculine, we continue to desecrate the planet, kill the animals, pollute the oceans, pollute the air, drill down into the earth, do fracking, which collapses the world into sinkholes, and plant uranium mining that literally desecrates the planet for, 1 million years, and do nuclear power plants, which when we have this pole shift, which, we can see the poles are melting, the waters are going to rise, we are going to have a pole shift. This is what science tells us. We're going to be in serious trouble if we don't take care of what's going on with the nuclear plants, just like Fukushima. I mean, that was just a drop in the bucket. So I think
actually.
Yes, a warning. And I think this is one of the reasons why the extraterrestrial conversation is a big one, because although there's certainly some extraterrestrial groups that seem to have their own agendas that are not necessarily about helping us, a lot of them are about helping us.
Mm-hmm.
They are more evolved races that can see how we're destroying our planet. They know what's coming. They have the big picture, where our politicians are working on a very small timeline. They're thinking about how to line their pockets and how to make money and how to stay in office and please the NRA and stay in power. They're not thinking, oh, I'm destroying the planet for the next 7 generations. They're not thinking, oh, they're thinking that extraterrestrials are something that they should hide because it's a political landmine and it will indicate that they don't have, ultimate power and control, and they're afraid the financial markets will fall. Instead of saying, we've got a pole shift coming. It might be 2 years, 20 years, or 200 years. We don't really know. But we've got some allies here, and we need to start preparing to make our planet safe for this kind of transition. So, it's a bit, there's so many things to talk about, whether we're talking about Jesus or Mary Magdalene or the extraterrestrials or evolution or consciousness or ascension. But the truth is, it's one puzzle with many parts that fits together. It's not just one conversation. It is the conversation, and these pieces all fit together, and they're all part of that whole.
Well, and I like to take it a step further than that, Tricia, because I believe that each one of us is one of the unique pieces that goes into that puzzle to activate it, to complete it. And that we each have something that nobody else can fill in that little place in the puzzle with.
I agree. I think this is such an exciting time to be alive, and that the souls that have come down here now, many of them volunteered to come down to be here for this incredibly exciting time. And others, of course, are watching from the sidelines, because they know how important it is. But it's, since the 2012 date, which, when we start talking about the change of the ages, we have 12 zodiacal signs and astrological signs, and it takes about 2,160 years for us to move through one of these signs. Mm-hmm. So the end of Pisces ended, there are different ideas about this, but it has to do with what is the celestial background in the springtime when the sun comes up at dawn. And so for 2,000 or 2,100 years, it's been Pisces, basically. And so we're right on the edge between Pisces and Aquarius. And the Theosophists, for example, in the early part of the 20th century, said that we entered 0 degrees of Aquarius in 1939. Now, it takes 72 years to move through 1 degree, and there are 30 degrees in each sign. You can just, a circle's 360, you can divide 12 zodiacal signs into 360, you come up with 30 degrees. So we would have had that 72-year period end, if it started in 1939 and 2011, which would have meant 2012 would have been year 1 of 1 degree into Aquarius. So we're in a period of time that in Revelations is called the tribulation. In other words, it's the testing to say, what kind of people are we? Are we kind and loving? Are we unity-oriented? Are we sexist, racist, prejudiced, narcissistic? Are we about service to self only at the cost of everyone else? Or are we working for the unity of the whole? And, we've got this incredible testing going on in the world today where, because of a lot of the policies of our present administration, the shadow is really up. That administration is making choices basically about money, greed, power, staying in power, lining their own pockets, and so forth. And we see as a result of that, we see so many, things like literally on a daily basis on the news. Are we going to, for example, with immigration, allow these little children to be separated from their parents because of politics, which can ruin their life because it imprints them in such a horrendous, traumatic way? What kind of people are we? Are we kind? Are we loving? Are we moral? Are we going to allow our children in school to be gunned down because the NRA wants to continue to make money? And politicians want to continue to be paid off by lobbyists. This is the test. We are literally in the testing time. What do we stand for? Do we stand for kindness, love, support, and unity? Or are we going after the bucks at the cost of our souls, basically? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a big conversation, and what an incredible time to be born. And it's for us to stand up. Whether it's through radio shows like this, or writing books, or working with charities, or working with children, or getting involved actually in politics. Lord help us. The people that have been most involved in politics, many of them are people who are driven by ambition. But who's being called into politics now are people who are truly humanitarians, who are really interested not in power, but in saying the people that are in the power aren't always making the right decisions. And of course, there's some very good people out there that are in power, but they can only, get so far if the wave is taking them under. Okay, so it's going to take a lot of us to stand up and make our voices heard.
But I also, on the other hand of that, I also believe that we're human beings and not human doings, and we can impact it one heart at a time. If you hold that energy and anchor that energy inside of unity and love, then that shifts it as well, because we're all connected.
I love that. And, I was just reading that wonderful David Hawkins book, Power versus Force. And for those of you who don't know about his work, he used a muscle testing or applied kinesiology to begin to calibrate the vibrational level of emotions, like shame and fear being some of the lowest, and guilt and all of those being really below survival level, and depression's under there. And then you get to 200 and you start moving up into, pride and courage and things like that, till eventually you get up to the Christ consciousnesses, which rates at about 1,000. And he's tried to rate, where we started off with our religions and where we are now, the politicians. I mean, he's done a lot of ratings. And so he was talking exactly about that, how one higher consciousness person can balance out in the vibrational fulcrum of it all, X amount of negative people. And so absolutely being is as important as doing. Yeah. But, the Kabbalah, this is the esoteric teachings, of course, of the Jewish religion, teach that, there's 4 major spheres. The world of emanation, that would be like where the divine begins to send out the energy to create everything. The world of creation, that would be equivalent to what we think of as the 6th and 7th dimension, where it's vibration, light, waves, form, sound, sacred geometry. The world of formation, that would be like the 4th and 5th dimension. That would be where forms, things like houses and trees and animals and bodies get created. And then this world, the 3rd dimension, they believe is the world of action. So it's the action of not just, meditating and being is absolutely great. It's necessary for us to stay centered and connected. But then what do we do with it in the world? Like you're doing this wonderful radio show, you are in the beingness, but you're also in the doingness.
Right.
Okay. And our listeners are doing by listening and being part of the show. They are doing. And as their consciousness rises, and then who do they affect? Whether it's over a cup of tea in the morning with a friend, okay, or whether it's, in a conversation where they, or whether it's more, direct action, planting trees or, saving the animals or saving the oceans I don't have time to do everything I believe in. So I wind up, I contribute to about 20 different Save the World organizations. And some years I can only do $20 in the whole year. But if 1,000 people do $20, that's $20,000. And so the people who are running that organization can then make a difference. So, there's only so many hours in the day, but we do what we can.
That's right. So we're running out of time, but I tell you what, I took her class on the Divine Feminine and Mary Magdalene, and it's an amazing journey.
Yeah. Thank you.
I highly recommend it, and you can do this now on Amazon. So when they go on Amazon, Tricia, how do they find this class?
It just went up today. So what I've been telling people is to go to Sacred Stories Media. Okay. Which is the one who's actually the producer for it. And I'm, of course, the teacher. And you look under Sacred You, and it's You like university. And you click on that, and you'll see the Jesus class, you'll see the Mary Magdalene class, and you can take them directly there. And just so you know, what happens is once you sign up for them, they send them to you, and you can watch them at your own leisure. You're not stuck on anybody's timetable. And they're kind of in modules of about an hour apiece. And you can kind of look down and go, I'm going to start with number 1, number 2. I think with Amazon, what's happened is instead of the entire course, she's put them up as individual, but part 1, part 2, part 3. And I think they just went up today. So I have even gone online to figure out how the heck to navigate through Amazon to find them. But, and
I have to say, they're beautifully produced. I mean, it's an experience not only in esoteric learning, but also in art. So they're beautifully produced.
I was a graphic designer, commercial photographer, so I worked for weeks and weeks on putting together the most beautiful images. And I'm as a Hermetics teacher, which teaches the secret language of how the ancients encoded their wisdom into symbols, I'm all about trying to lay those wonderful gems out for the listener, and so that you can put these pieces together for yourself. You can see it. And my joy to do it that way. And I'm doing it now with the Egyptian Mystery class, which hopefully will launch if I get it done by mid-July. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tricia. I know you're a very busy woman, and I appreciate you taking time to join us today. Her website is Tricia McCannon, TriciaMcCannon.com. So go avail yourself of her services. Check out Sacred Stories Publishing. And then click on
Sacred Stories Media.
SacredStoriesMedia.com, and then click on Sacred You to find the classes there as well. And next week, my guest is going to be a spiritual troubadour. His name is Todd Medina, and he's got some interesting stuff that he's doing now on the internet. So come join us next week so that you can find out more about 24/7 getting access to esoteric information, ascension-related stuff with Todd Medina. And until next week, remember, people who take responsibility for their lives create the reality they desire.